What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to another Swift video. In today's video, we're going to be learning all about iOS 14 widgets. So here we are on Apple's developer website, and they're talking about the introduction of WidgetKit, and here's a nice screenshot of these really cool looking widgets you can now create that are up to date, that update live. They're all over your home screen. They're all the rave lately, so I think it's time that we finally talk about these. So here's the app on the right that we're going to make. You can see here that we've got a widget with a background, some text on it, and there's two sizes. Here is our related iOS app from which we're going to type in some text here. Let's type in get ready. Go ahead and hit that save button and we go back to the home screen. You'll actually see that our widgets have updated live. We can also long tap on them and we have an edit option here. Tapping it flips this guy around. We don't actually have any things we're editing here, but we'll talk about the notion of how to edit this, how apps like Color Widget or Widgetsmith use this to provide tons of different widget configuration options and basically everything in between. So get excited, get ready. Make sure you destroy that like button as always. If you're a returning viewer, hit subscribe while you're at it. Let's talk about some widgets. Quick pause before we get into the video. If you haven't seen it already, I am hard at work putting together iOSacademy.io, a community where all of us iOS engineers can come together, learn how to build some of the top apps like Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, in addition to interview prep to land some of these iOS roles at top tech companies. So if you're interested in the free and premium content to come, head on over to iOSacademy.io and enter your email address in the waitlist form, and you will be notified as content becomes available. That said, let's get into the video. All right, we're going to begin by opening up Xcode and creating a new project here. We'll stick with the app template to get started. Go ahead and call this widgets example. Spell that correctly. For now, make sure this is set to storyboard. We're going to be adding the widget with SwiftUI, of course, but the app will stay with a storyboard. Go ahead and continue. We'll throw it on our desktop. And before we get into the code, let me select a simulator from this list. We'll go with the 11 Pro Max since I've got it open here already. And go ahead and hit the run button to build and run it in your simulator, just like that. We're in dark mode here, so go ahead and hit Command-Shift-A to get into light, and let's start talking about some widgets. So the first thing we want to do is actually create a new target for our widget. So we're going to go to File, New, we're going to go to Target, and in this laundry list of things in here, we're going to go ahead and search for widgets, and you're going to come across widget extension. Double click that, and let's see, let's go ahead and call this my widget. We can or can choose not to check this. Basically, there's this notion of intent. So let's leave it checked, and I'll talk through this in just a moment. So leave that checked and go ahead and continue. And it's going to create it. You might get a pop-up of Xcode asking you to enable the widget scheme. Go ahead and hit yes if you get it. And you'll have a scheme in here for the widget now. So let's just try building this and see what we get. So let's go ahead and select it, stick with the 11 Pro Max. Hit the run button, and let's see what we get, if anything. I think I hit the pause button there, so hit the run button. And now here you'll see the widget pop up just like that. And you'll see by default it just shows you the time, no background, no nothing. So let me actually move the app. Whoops, let's move the app onto that other page of the home screen as well. And what we can actually do is let's go ahead and hit this plus button. And let's find our app, which is this widget example. And by default, we actually get all three sizes here. So we get small, medium, and large. We're just going to stick with the medium and add that there as well. Now let's take a look at how to actually customize this, how to pass data from our app to the widget, and all that important stuff. So let's see what happened when we created that My Widget target. So we created this folder for us, and you can see there's not a whole lot of stuff in here. There's mainly two important things. The first thing is a Swift file, which, let's close this right panel, gives us our preview here, which is not showing up. Let's hit resume. But it gives us some template code, and I'm going to talk through this, and we're going to edit a bunch of it. So let's start at the bottom. So at the bottom here, we have a preview of our widget view, and our widget content view actually takes in a configuration intent. And this is basically that intent checkbox that we left checked. We'll talk about it in a second. Right above it here is the main entry point for our application for the widget extension. Let me make this a little broader. There we go. So in here, basically, we're just returning a body of a intent configuration with a provider and then a entry view. Then here we have a MyWidget entry view, which is basically an object that just wraps a entry as well as returns a view. In this case, it's just returning the date and showing it in text. Let me go ahead and hit the pause button here. Looks like there is none because my computer fan's gonna get nice and loud, but moving along, we have a simple entry here, which is basically the model we're passing into our widget. And up here is really the meat of all of this. So this provider thing is basically responsible for returning a timeline. Let me go ahead and actually close this so my fan settles down. This is responsible for returning a timeline of widget views to the system for a given time frame. So for example, if we wanted a weather widget that updated every 30 minutes, we would go ahead and return futurecast weather for 30-minute intervals. Or if we wanted anything else like that, we can go ahead and do that in here. So that's basically the crux of a widget. Now let's talk about how to edit it and share data. So editing it is fairly trivial. So we've got the SwiftUI view here, and I'm gonna go ahead and make this a little nicer. So let's actually open up that preview panel again so we can see it as we edit it. And hopefully my fan doesn't decide to be super annoying, but we're gonna grab this text and we're gonna first start off with a Z stack. And a Z stack is just a Z axis stack, as you probably guessed. We're gonna have an image in here called background. And then we're gonna throw a text on top of it just like that, but we don't have that background in yet. So let's go ahead and open up our assets file here. Let's go ahead and create a new image set and call it a background. And I grabbed a picture from Google Images right before starting. So go ahead and drag that in for your background here, just like that. And we're gonna go back to that other view. And let's open up that panel again for our canvas. And let's see, so that's our background. We should see it now in just a moment. Let's make it resizable. And let's go ahead and we want this to actually update. So let's go ahead and hit Command R in a second. I'm not sure why the background is not showing up. Sometimes the previews decide to just be useless. All right, cool, there it is. It's not showing up here. We might need to do a live preview to get it to show up, but instead of wasting everyone's time, we're just gonna go with the simulator. So we've got our image showing up now in both of our widgets. We've got the time on top of it. We can see that the background is resizable. Let's go ahead and give this a aspect ratio of fill. We're also gonna say clipped. And let's see, let's go ahead and give this a foreground color. We're gonna give this a foreground color of white. And let's go ahead and run that. And you'll see actually this one will probably update first rather than this one. Looks like our image is not taking up the entirety of the widget now. So we can actually fix that with a geometry reader. So we're gonna go ahead and create a geometry reader, which is this guy right here. And this passes in geometry as a parameter. What we can go ahead and here is say the frame of the widget is geometry, the size.width, the height is the size.height, and it's center aligned. Go ahead and run, and you'll see that it now takes up the entirety of the space. We actually want to get rid of the clipped. Let's try that one more time. So now it should take up the whole thing and not actually clip. All right, let's see. So we've got fit here. We want to fill. Third time's a charm. There we go. Looking good. Okay, cool. So we've got our widget rendering. It's basic SwiftUI. Let me just add a larger font, and then let's take a look at how to pass data to this guy. So we're going to make a font here, and we're going to Let's actually give it a size. So we're going to say font, and we're going to go with a system font. Let's just go with a size and a weight. So we'll go with 24 and a weight of semi-bold and a design of, let's go with default. Why not? That's nice and fun. Go ahead and run it, and you'll see your text will be much larger now, nice and big so we can read it. And let's talk about the data. So our iOS app is empty, which is what we expect. So what I'm going to go ahead and do in here is in the view controller, we're going to add a button. We're going to actually add a field, and we're going to type in something into the fields. And when we hit the button, we're going to go ahead and pass that data to our widget, and the widget is going to show it. So let's go ahead and add a field. Let me start by giving this a background color, actually. So we're going to say the background color of our view controller is link, which is a dark blue. Let's actually make it system blue. We're going to want to go ahead and change the scheme up here to be our iOS app now, since this is what we're going to run. And let's quickly create a field on here, which is going to be a UI text field. And I'm not going to make this too fancy for the sake of time and focusing on the widget. And we're going to give this a placeholder of enter text. Let me also give the fields a background color of white, and that's good enough for now. Let's go ahead and add this as a subview of field. We're going to pop up the keyboard on it as soon as the app launches. And we also want a button here. So let me create a button, which is going to be a UI button. And here we'll do UI button. Let me set a title on it of save. We're going to return the button. And let me also give this a background color of system green and set a title color of white. So I apologize, I went through that very quickly. I've got several other videos on this type of stuff, but just for the sake of staying focused on the widget, since this video has already gotten longer than I anticipated, let's go ahead and just add it as a subview. And I'm going to go ahead and add a target to it. And we're going to say did tap button here. And the event is going to be touch up inside, just like that. We want to go ahead and create this function. And we also want to set up frames for our two views in viewDit layout subviews. So the fields is going to be cgrect20 view.safearea.top plus 10 view.frame.size.width minus 40 and 52. Just a random number I made up, 52. And the button will be right below it. So we're going to say button.frame is cgrect is going to be 30. And this is going to be view.safearea insets.top plus 70. Width will be view.frame.size.width minus 60, and the height here will be 50. Go ahead and hit Command R, and we should have our iOS app running, but it looks like we're crashing, so that's not good. Let's see what happened there. So let's hit that run button one more time. Let's see what happens. Don't want my antivirus pop-up. That's not what we're looking for. Let's go ahead and hit that pause button. We're going to pause it for the springboard and pause it for the widget. Sometimes the simulator just crashes, so I'm not sure if that's something we broke or something going on weird here. All right, looks like that was the simulator being just dumb. So, okay, we've got our app looking good. We've got a field and we've got a button. Now let's talk about how to pass data. So there's a variety of ways to pass data. You don't even need to pass data per se. You can fetch from the internet directly to populate your widget. So if we come back to the widget Swift file here, you'll see that this provider is basically provides all the data. And let me run through these methods. So placeholder is basically the function that you should use to quickly return a dummy view of your widget. This is how the iOS system uses to render a kind of a placeholder, as the name implies, of what the widget's going to look like. Snapshot should also return something fairly quickly where it wants to give you the latest snapshot to the user to see right away. And then timeline is where you really want to provide a timeline, which wraps an array of your entries. You notice we have an entry data here. We keep appending them in this for loop. And that's basically to provide to the system a collection of widget states. And the really interesting thing to note here is none of these functions have a return statement. They all just have parameters, and they actually all have completion blocks. And the really important thing to understand here is you can actually create a URL fetch request. Let's say you want to get the weather for the current user's location. You can actually issue a network call here, an API call, and then call the completion handler once it returns. Now keep in mind, widgets are meant to be on a home screen, so you don't want it to be a super long network call, and you're also going to degrade the user's battery, but that is an option here, and Apple was very, very intentional to make sure this is a completion handler and not just a return statement that needs to return immediately in the function. And I can say it on good authority that this is exactly how Apple does their weather app themselves. So that's how you could return data. Now we're going to be writing data from the view controller here, whatever the user enters in the field, and we're going to pass it directly to the widget. And to do that, we're going to leverage user defaults. So we're going to create user defaults that are shared between the widget and the app here. So when you come to the project navigator, you want to go to first the iOS app. You want to go to signing and capabilities and go ahead and hit this little plus here. And we want to search for app groups. And the notion of app groups is we can have a group that's shared by multiple targets in our app. So we want to go here as well to the other one and hit plus and hit app groups. And I'm going to go ahead and create a group in both of these, and we're going to enable it in both of them. And that's how the two things will share data, the two things being the iOS app and the widget. So we're going to say group.widget cache. Make it nice and simple. Go ahead and hit OK on it to add. And you'll see that it's checked, but it's red. And you'll also see that it says waiting for repair here. What it's actually doing is it's contacting the Apple developer portal and just like setting up profiles and whatnot. But if you give this a moment here, you'll see that it'll change to white once it's no longer an issue. Once it goes away, just hit this little refresh icon until it changes from red, like that. Let's go ahead and go to this other one. And we also want to add the exact same group here. Very important that it's named exactly the same. So go ahead and hit OK. Once again, now you shouldn't see it red because they already repaired it for one of the targets, and make sure it's checked. So cool. So let's now go to our view controller. And when we hit this button, we're going to do two things. First, we're going to get rid of the keyboard because nobody wants to see the keyboard once you're done typing. The next thing we're going to do is get the text out of the field, and we're going to make sure the text is not empty. Finally, we're going to go ahead and write this text to that shared app group. So here is how we create that user defaults group with our given suite name, as they call it. So we're going to say user defaults with a suite name and go ahead and pass in that group that we created. And now in this guy, we're going to go ahead and say set value, and it's going to be text. And we'll just say the key is text. Notice that this is optional. That's expected. You can go ahead and add a guard statement here, but really doesn't matter for the sake of the video. So that's all we need to do here, barring one more thing. So Apple introduced, as you saw in the beginning of this video, a new framework called WidgetKit. And WidgetKit has a widget center, very similar to Notification Center. And through that widget center, you can actually prompt your widget to go ahead and refresh. So actually, if you just hit the dot here, you'll see that there's three functions on here. There's get current configuration, reload, two instances of reload. We're just going to be lazy and reload all timelines. And that's how our app is going to tell our widget, rather tell the iOS system, go and update the associated widget. So cool, looking good. So let me copy this. And we're going to go to our widget now, the Swift file here. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to update the provider as well as the entry here to go ahead and be able to get the text and populate it into our widget. So cool, first things first, we're gonna say here, let text is going to be a string. Actually, before we do that, let me go ahead and hit run. And this should build the iOS app and run it. It looks like we have an error here because we changed that. So let me just go ahead and fix that really fast. So we're gonna say here, text is just an empty string. And then in this entry, we're also going to add a text. And I realize I haven't talked about configuration yet. Don't worry, I definitely will. And then here, let me go ahead and add a text as well. And again, we're just gonna make it an empty string. Go ahead and hit Command B to build. We should be building. It looks like we still have an error here because our preview actually also needs a text. And I'm gonna pass in hello widget. Go ahead and hit Command R. Hopefully no more errors. All right, looking good. We've got our app loading. Let's just go ahead and type something in here. So no, we don't want to enable dictation. We're going to come in here and type in, let's just type in iOS Academy. Let's see what that looks like. Go ahead and hit the save button. Now I didn't add an alert to confirm, but let's just take the simulator's word that it went ahead and saved. Go ahead and run your widget now. You'll notice that we don't really see anything different in the actual widget. It's just a time still. But what we need to do is we want to update the provider to go ahead and get our data. So we're going to say here, we're going to paste that user default here, and we're going to say the text is going to be user defaults. And we want to get a value for the key text. And if it's empty, we're going to say no text. And now I'm going to pass this text into the text parameter that we added on the widget entry, just like that. And we should be in business. So go ahead and hit Command R. Let's see what the problem is here. Looks like we're passing in text. Cannot convert value of type any. It's because we want to cast this as a string. Just like that. Let's try that one more time. And we should see iOS Academy in here now. All right, looks like we still see our time. And the reason we see our time is we never updated the view. So let's find the view. So here's the view. We got our image in here, and then we have our text. And we want to update this to show, instead of the date, we want to show the entry.text. So go ahead and hit that one more time. And now, if you look at that, we see iOS Academy here. So let's go in here and change that text. So I'm going to come in here and type in, here is some new text. Go ahead and hit the save button. Go ahead and hit the home button right there. And what you'll see is pretty cool is that it updated automatically. So how the heck did it do that? Because that's how you really want your widgets to behave, where they update immediately. And if you recall, in our view controller, we actually called this function here on Widget Center, and we were like, hey, something clearly changed, which in this case was we went ahead and updated the text. Go ahead and refresh all the timelines. So what iOS went ahead and did is it went to your provider and it was like, hey, you told me to refresh, give me new stuff. And it pulled from user defaults and gave it the new text, and it renders appropriately just like that. So that's basically how you would update your widget. And as promised, let's go back to the Swift file here. Let's talk about this configuration before we wrap up. So widgets can be created with two types of states. There is an intent configuration, and there is also a static configuration. So if we look at static configuration, this is an object describing the content of a widget that has no user configuration options. So fairly straightforward, it's some static content. So this isn't used as commonly. You could use it, I guess, in theory to just show data, but the interesting one is intent configuration. And if we actually go and type this in here, you'll see that this allows the user to configure your widget. So if you've ever seen a widget which you can pick your location, or even those really popular apps like Color Widgets or Widgetsmith, this is what they're using to go ahead and allow the user to pick different widgets. Now, how do you actually go ahead and do that? So you'll see that the widget is taking in a configuration here. It's configuration.intent. So what the heck is this? So this is a file and a class actually that gets generated by Xcode when you create your configuration the first time. and it's generated based on this intent definition file here. And if you've never used intent before, this might be very kind of like new territory for you, but if you've used anything with SiriKit, you know what this stuff is. But basically, you can add in custom parameters in here. You can add in things like locations, strings, custom types, enums, you name it. So here we can add a custom parameter of, I don't know, let's go ahead and say this is name. And then here you can configure a bunch of things about it. So we have name, the user can type in a string, it can be supported by Siri, et cetera, et cetera. And if you go ahead and run your widget now, and hopefully I didn't break anything when I was changing stuff left and right. The cool thing you'll notice if my simulator decides to show up is, all right, looks like we have an error in here. Let's fix that error really fast. Let's see where our error is. So it looks like it's complaining about our widget intent definition here. So let me just get rid of this and show you the quick example. Maybe I'll make a separate video on intent configuration. So go ahead and hit this run button. And in the simulator, hopefully if it decides to run like that, if you tap and hold a widget, you'll see because it's an intent configuration, we can hit edit widget. And when we come back here, we actually don't have anything to edit. We can just see my widget and the description here, and it's actually pulling that. It can pull it directly from here, a title and a description. But if you had parameters in here, you would be able to configure those. So it could be a user's location. If your app supplies multiple widgets, it could be a secondary type of widget, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this video has gotten way longer than I wanted it to, but lots of things to cover with widgets. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure you destroy that like button as always. Curious to hear you guys' thoughts. Do you think widgets are useful? Do you think they're gimmicky? I think it's also interesting that Apple is forcing people to use SwiftUI to create widgets. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's because they want people to use it more and people aren't using it? So on and so forth. Also, hit subscribe as always to help grow the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video.